This is Marshall. He did the thing that every entrepreneur dreams of doing, exiting a bootstrap company.
Yeah, we sold it for $52 million. Got about 18 million cash and then another around 8 million seller note, about a $26 million package. And then I hung on to equity as well.
But here's the crazy part. He started it as a side business that he barely even worked on at first. He literally tracked every hour he spent on it and viewed it as a game.
January to May 1st, 2024, 782 hours.
782 hours total.
Got the receipts, I can prove it.
So if you take his $26 million package divided by 782 hours, it breaks down to $33,000 an hour, which doesn't even include his equity cut. That is wild. And assuming 8-hour workdays, that breaks down to spending only 97 days total on this business.
I use this as a way to see, okay, how little time can I spend on something? You know, things still happen without me. Yeah, I looked at it almost like a game, you know, like how little could I do at this?
Okay, I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated walking into his huge house. I kind of felt like I maybe was wasting his time. He had just sold his business for a $52 million valuation, but I couldn't have been more wrong. He was the most genuine dude ever, and I was blown away by how clearly he articulates different aspects of business. Today, he's great at delegation, but he didn't used to be.
Everything is practice. Like, you're not out of the gate good at delegating to other people or starting a company or marketing, whatever. Like, anything takes a lot of reps and you get better over time. And I viewed delegation the same way. Like, I had a lot of false starts and, oh, love the idea of hiring an assistant. And would do it. I'm like, I don't know what to give this person. You know, like, I went through all that same stuff.
But here's the thing, it wasn't always easy for Marshall. A lot of his businesses were really hard until he found what he called certain cheat codes to play the business game on easy mode.
Back when we were running the e-commerce stuff, like, top line was growing. I was just like, why are we not making money? Like, then when I shifted to like a different business, I felt like I was on easy mode. An influencer, if they have their own business and they can promote it to their own audience, it's like the biggest cheat code ever. Like, another idea I think that someone could run with that I think is really interesting is, it's just such a cheat code in my opinion. If I was launching this business today, I would.
So I flew out to Dallas to sit down with him and learn his frameworks for identifying really profitable businesses, how he built and sold multiple successful companies, the brand new business he's working on right now, and all of his favorite cheat codes that he's learned along the way. As always, check out the link in the description for all the resources and tools that he mentions. Let's dive in. Marshall, thanks for having us, man. So let's jump right in. In April of 2020, you did two things that would change your life forever. What did you do?
Yeah, so it was COVID, right? You know, everything's locked down. You know, it's like I had an e-commerce business. Eventually that boomed. You know, everyone in e-commerce boomed. We didn't know what it was going to look like. And I also had a bunch of short-term rentals. We're getting all these cancellations. Like, I've got these businesses that I don't know if, you know, they're going to do well through this. They're going to hurt. And I remember, you know, seeing stories of all these different startups that were started during downturns and recessions. It just felt like we were going to hit a recession. And I was like, okay, you can either feel bad or you can, you know, buckle up and try to do something about it. You know, I just started listing out different ideas and different things. So first, you know, I had this e-commerce business called Peel. We sold super thin iPhone cases is what we were known for. And it was a mobile accessory brand. And so it's like, okay, what can we do in this space that fits what's happening in the world right now? And we came up with this product called the Touch Tool. And it was made out of brass. And it was basically a keychain tool to allow you to open doors and basically not touch surfaces. And again, this was before we knew, you know, it was transferred airborne. You know, we thought it was touch. And we ended up developing it, I mean, super fast. It was, I think, 6 days from like idea to in manufacturing and taking pre-orders on the website. And it just went bonkers. It ended up doing $1 million in sales over a 60-day span from like idea to the 60th day. It just blew my mind, you know? And so, you know, I think it was a product for the times and it did really well. And we had the perfect timing, just like everyone's in a panic and needs something, you know? And the other thing is I launched a business at the time called Shepherd. We later renamed it to somewhere.com. We're essentially a headhunter agency to find overseas talent for remote roles with primarily US companies. So everything from assistants to people in operations, like whatever the role, if you can find them overseas in a remote role. At the time in the Philippines. And that business went on to be a big acquisition for me.
And prior to that, you're already in the e-commerce game. You already were doing some real estate as well. Can you talk about the business Peel and how you decided to start that? And is that where your first like successful business came from?
But yeah, one of the early ones that made actual money for me was Peel and a couple other e-commerce things. So it was essentially like the thinnest case you could possibly get. help with scratch protection, a little bit of drop protection. And so we were known for the original super thin case, and started that I think in December 2012. So yeah, that was at the time, yeah, I was like 8 to 9 years old by the time the touch tool thing happened. So we had been around for a while and had, established following and stuff.
Yeah. In looking back at that, like, are there any lessons for somebody just getting started in their business journey to like pick something popular, say an iPhone, and then pick, you're going to be the most this, or the thinnest or the most durable. Yeah. Like, is that how you guys were thinking about it? And looking back, is that how you would encourage others to?
I like that framework. Like the e-commerce stuff, we just looked at like, let's solve some simple problems with simple solutions. Like there was a bedding company, sleeping, I always think I'm saying like a gambling company, a linen bedding company. And the thought was like, making your bed is really annoying. Okay, how could you solve that? And obviously like the first thought is like a mechanical arm that like makes your bed for you. And like, that's way too complicated. I'm not an engineer. So our solution with that, as an example, was like, well, let's break down what making a bed is. You have to kind of retuck in the sheet. You have to realign the top sheet and the duvet cover. Well, okay, what if you cut the top sheet and the duvet to be the same size? What if you had a really light connection system for the top sheet and duvet cover that kept them together? So that was like one of our first things we launched around Peel as well. And so I like of just kind of keeping tabs on like, what are little annoyances I have throughout the day that you kind of just live with and you kind of shrug off, or like, well, if there was a solution for this, I might actually like, someone might pay money for this. And so for a long time, for years, I used to just keep a log of like, not like what's a problem, because I think that is such a hard way to look at things, because you don't feel like it's a problem because you're used to living with it. Where is there like friction in my life? And I think that's even too strong a word, friction, like little annoyances.
Friction or personal frustration lists I've heard of. People.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
I saw you had the 5-minute journal there. Maybe after people are done with what they're grateful for, they could do their anti-gratitude of business ideas.
Yeah. And then with that list, then it's, scale back like this way of solving, making your bed, I think people think, oh, mechanical arm, let's think of how the Jetsons in the future would do this. But well, no, like what's the simplest way to solve this? And that'll make it easier for you to develop the product as a first-time entrepreneur, at any level. And I think it also makes the marketing a lot simpler. It's really easy to pitch this thing when you have a really simple solution. We used to always think about it like, what's a GIFable solution? Like, could we make a little 5-second clip? They're like, I get it, in that little clip. So like the cell phone case is just like, you show a bulky one, you show this, you show the original. It's like, I get it. It's like, okay, it looks way better. It looks like your iPhone still, and not slapped on rubber, you know what I mean? So
you touched on kind of being in the game for a while, and that enabled you to see an opportunity when COVID came around and move really quickly. You also were using within your own business, you kind of just were looking for offshore, like scrappy solutions. Where did that lead you?
Literally my first business was an architectural rendering business. I used to want to be an architect. I worked for a firm for a few years. I loved, when firms had someone internally that could either sketch or make a 3D model of what the project's going to look like and put it on the sign or whatever, but not everyone had that. So I found a group, happened to be in the Philippines, that could do the artistry work. I knew architects, and I went, and sold that. And so that was kind of my first foray into like outsourcing. I was working with someone overseas. They did the deliverables. I basically sold it and, built the brand around it. So then when I had the e-commerce business, we hired operations people. We had a finance person in the Philippines, was not afraid to do that, and had just always a remote team. It was always a mix of US and European and overseas talent. I, look at friends' businesses, we, chat and compare numbers or, whatever. And it's just like, no one was really, they were very afraid to like hire overseas, or they just flat out weren't. And I went over to the Philippines and hung out with Jomer, who eventually was my co-founder. He was doing operations work for Peel. And I remember him showing us around town. He's like, yeah, that tower is Amex customer support. That one is Stripe customer support. Shopify's in there. And it was just like kind of eye-opening, like, okay, like Fortune 500 is doing this. They get it. It's hard being a small business. Like, they're always beating small businesses out. It's like, why are none of my friends doing this? So that was kind of the impetus of that idea, was like, man, like it's been an unlock for my own business. It's helped improve margins. Like we've struggled with, money at some points, and it just really helped being lean. So the thought was like, all right, like I need to help other small businesses do this. So that was the thought, started hitting up friends and like, hey, I'm offering this service. Like we were kind of doing a little bit of consulting as well at the time of like, let me look at your business, let me make some recommendations on where I think you should hire and for what roles. But yeah, kind of snowballed from my own experience and then hitting up friends, and didn't know what a headhunter was until I read that term in a book while starting the business and figured out the pricing model that way. But yeah, it was, good timing with COVID and people being open to the idea of more remote work. And it's kind of a perfect storm as well at the time.
Yeah. And then what did that business look like in revenue the first couple of years?
We were at the time, it was $3 to $5 grand a head, was like our finder's fee when we placed talent. And so it very quickly was, $5 grand to 10 to 30. By the time I sold it, we were doing, I think, around 15 million in top line. And we had really high margins. It was very, very profitable business. We dog fooded the whole business. 99% of the staff was in the Philippines or Latin America. And it was me and I think 2 other US guys. So yeah, it scaled super quickly. It was all bootstrap. We never raised money. Yeah, we were around 10 million EBITDA when we sold, and we were at 8 on the track to do 10, I guess, when we sold, but grew very, very quickly. And there's obviously a few reasons for that we can get into, but.
Yeah. And how much did you end up selling it for?
Yeah, so we sold for 52 as a valuation. I ended up selling to Nick Huber, which was a partner that came in later to help kind of promote the business. He was a customer, and he helped grow the business with his own audience. And then, basically saw the inside of the business. I really love this business. We got an offer from someone else to acquire it. Obviously, had to tell all shareholders, decided to turn it down. And then Nick, came in at the last minute. It was like, well, what if I bought it, more all cash at a slightly better valuation? So that's kind of how that all came to be.
And so how much did you end up selling the business for?
Yeah, we sold it for 52 million.
And how much did you take home?
I kept around 13.5% of the business, stayed on the board, and then I got about 18 million cash and then another around 8 million seller note. So about a $26 million package, and then I hung on to equity as well.
And that was just a regular Tuesday for you? What did that feel like?
No. Yeah, I always read about how people feel when the wire hits. It's just weird. You're like, okay, obviously big smile. I'm like refreshing with my wife. But yeah, I just went and played pickleball that evening, and just like the rest of the day was kind of normal. It was just like, at that point, what's coming. And so you kind of almost already mentally celebrated. I don't want to downplay it. It was a really, really awesome experience. And that's, what you always hope as an entrepreneur is have some big outcome. And I had fun, bought some toys, but things eventually settle back down. You come back to reality. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What would you say, was there a certain point in time you remember when I'd imagine, do you feel successful today?
I feel financially free, I guess is the way I would deem it. I have kids, I have a wife, like there's other things that matter besides just money. But it feels good to secure that outcome. And, as long as we're not stupid with money, we should be taken care of for the rest of our lives. And it just feels good to kind of check that box off.
And you have been in the game for a while. And at the end of the day, all we're talking about is resource allocation, right? Are you allocating your time, your budget, your headcount towards the thing that drive the business? You actually put together an awesome delegation leap course, I think a few years back, that I remember going through, and you had a few screenshots, maybe we'll show them on screen, of here's how I would do it in Notion, and very tactical ways to walk through of thinking about delegating. What are some of the few low-hanging fruit delegation things that you see most entrepreneurs are not doing?
Yeah, I think as a whole, people don't delegate enough or just don't get started at all. Yeah, the course you're mentioning was something we did for free that people can still find. But if you're starting for the first time and you're, trying to figure out what should I even delegate, use your notes app, get a piece of paper or whatever, just keep a log of what you do day to day. As you're working throughout today, tomorrow, and just log everything you do. Do I check stats at this time? Do I go, reply to comments on YouTube videos here or, Twitter or whatever? And then review that. And I would bucket things into, what's a thing that comes up ad hoc that is what's a daily, what's a weekly, what's a monthly, maybe there's some annual tasks as well. And I would start to put together an SOP, which is a standard operating procedure. Basically, open Loom, record yourself doing the thing, and and literally verbally talk through what you're doing. That will be your directions to give to someone else to now hopefully hand that off to someone. And, obviously first time, then review what they do. But that's the basics of it, all the way from hiring your first person all the way up to delegating management and how you think about things. Is like, you just have to translate your knowledge to someone else. And I just try to do that in the least tedious way possible, which is just record yourself doing it. And so, I think for a small company, maybe you're a solo entrepreneur or a larger business, any size, I like to think about things through departments. Like any big business, you have marketing, you have sales, you have someone doing the deliverables, or maybe it's delivering the product, or it's a software or whatever. If software, you have developers, you have a finance department. And if it's just you, that's fine. It's 5 minutes out of your day here and I'm finance department. But I like to think about it that way, because as fast as you can, I would think about getting someone fully dedicated. I'm hiring a customer support person. I'm hiring a videographer. I'm hiring a salesperson to plug into that role. And like, that's entrepreneurship at the end of the day. Is you can delegate these things. You put people in places to do the work. You can scale up via that. You keep adding in those people. Eventually, if you get large enough, you can hire managers to manage those people. And eventually you could hire a CEO to oversee the managers in all these departments, and you sit on a board, and like, that's the ladder, and it starts with the basics of handing off your knowledge to someone else to do the thing, so you no longer have to do it. And you can think about your business and have the time to think about tweaking and how are we going to grow? What are we going to do here? And that's the essence of the like working in your business versus working on, that I think everyone knows about.
Totally. And I think you even had the idea too of like, now perhaps you could actually record it. Maybe you don't have somebody that you're going to give that to, but that could help you. Maybe you take that recording, get it transcribed, put it into AI, and like have it write the SOP for you. Yeah. Or have it say like, what am I missing here? Maybe that nowadays could be like step 0 or 1. Just get it into an SOP using AI, then hire somebody to make it better.
Yeah, for sure. Before AI, like, I actually like to have the person, like the first person in that role, whether it's an assistant or someone doing that, watch my video and you write the written directions. And then I'm going to read your directions, and that will tell me, did I miss something? Did you miss something? And then go do the thing. And obviously we'll review, how that went and all that. You can't just hand it off and be done. But yeah, I like that from like a checks and balances standpoint of like, did you, because we all think we explain something how we know it, but like how that gets translated and how someone internalizes it can be different, and there can be gaps. So I think that's a good way to catch that along the way.
Do you have any weird tracking behaviors or weird habits that you like to do on the internet?
Yeah. One thing I have done for probably 7 to 10 years is I track my time, even though I don't bill my time out hourly or anything. So I use Harvest. It just kind of sits in the taskbar on my Mac. And from just like really high level, I've broken things up into, at one point I had a few different companies I was involved in. And it was just that. It was just company name, answering emails, doing finance tasks, things like that. I kind of just grouped them high level. I wasn't trying to get super granular. And as I like swap between, I'm working on Shepherd today and now I'm going to switch to Peel for 2 hours or whatever, I would just, toggle the timer. And I've done that for years and years and years. And the reason why I did it is because I wanted to look back and see, like, it started from like how much time am I really spending on this? Like, if this is the priority, I want the time that I'm spending across everything to reflect that. I think we're terrible estimators as humans. And so it's just a habit that's stuck. And it's unlocked, or it's uncovered a lot of interesting findings for me. And then on the delegation side, when I decided I wanted to get better at delegation, I use this as a way to see, okay, how little time can I spend on something? Things still happen without me was a measure I used for it.
Yeah, I love that so much, because like even the order of which we just talked about, first was like, batch out your things on Tuesdays, and then, then you switch roles on, and you put that on your calendar for Wednesdays, you do something else. But in reality, people just move. If it's just you on the invite, you move that around. That's like not an actual look back. This actually is a look back where you are clicking start work, you do the thing, stop work. And that enables you to like see patterns that you otherwise would have never seen.
Yeah. I looked at it almost like a game, like how little could I do at this? The other thing too is like everything is practice. Like you're not out of the gate good at delegating to other people or starting a company or marketing or whatever. Like anything takes a lot of reps and you get better over time. And I viewed delegation the same way. Like I had a lot of false starts and love the idea of hiring an assistant and would do it. And like, I don't know what to give this person, like I went through all that same stuff.
And I was actually reading in your 2018 yearly review, you said that you hired an assistant and you had this kind of aha moment and said you would always up until that point ultimately find it too cumbersome to explain how to do everything and then cancel hiring like cheap virtual assistant, $8 an hour. This time, however, I went super premium and hired someone 3 hours per day for $37 an hour. What would your recommendation be for an entrepreneur? Step one, do this kind of time audit and see where you would want help. Step two, go premium with your virtual assistant.
I think if you can, I like if you have a lot of tasks that are ideally in a perfect world, you have a big chunk of your time is spent on something where you can hire someone dedicated for that. However, if you're more piecemeal and I'm spending, 2 hours a day on bookkeeping and an hour on social media moderation and, an hour of this and that, maybe hiring a more broad, just kind of generalist executive assistant is maybe better for you at that stage. So when I wrote that was 2018. That was prior to starting Shepherd later somewhere. So I went back actually and hired a Filipino has been my assistant for the last 3 or 4 years. At the time, it definitely helped for me to go super premium, stateside with someone. But I just, again, over time, figuring stuff out, I went back to overseas. But inside of that, one thing I think is really interesting about hiring overseas is the gap between like a junior and like a senior level person is $1,000. I mean, give or take, right? It could be $500, could be $1,000 a month in salary. Stateside, junior to like senior anything is hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right? And so I think if you're going overseas, you're going to Latin America, whatever, I definitely like spending a little bit more and hiring premium, getting someone with mid to senior level experience. You can get someone so much better for just a little bit more money and you're going to have a way better outcome for yourself.
It reminds me, one of the things that we do at AppSumo is like, we'll have a lot of outside advisors at like very top companies. Mm-hmm. And so you could buy just, a handful of hours from them each month, for certain leadership roles in the company. And so it's like, that's to me the equivalent of like first kind of start out this ultra premium just for a few hours just to see what great looks like. Mm-hmm. And then use that to be like, okay, now we could go higher and kind of do the thing. It's almost kind of what you did of like, you didn't really know how that delegating stuff worked. So you hired and you paid up for it a little bit. And then you figured out, okay, let me make this let me kind of operationalize this and figure out the way to do it.
For most things, I like to pull someone in full time, again, because it's a lot cheaper overseas. And if I feel like, I'm just shy, I'm like, I only need like 30 hours of work, you can find there's a lot of tasks that are like, you know what? If I had someone that has an extra 10 hours, like you can find those repeatable tasks too. Of like, whenever you're finished with all my stuff, I want you to research future guests for the show, in your case, or where it's like, there are things that if you've freed your day, you're like, okay, I've got some free time, give those things to your assistant as well. And I think those are great things to fill in, that gap of like, do I need someone full time? And if you have someone full time, you're going to get a better outcome as well because they're dedicated to you and you alone. Versus, hey, I need you for 3 hours, but I need you for 3 hours now, not like, well, I got another client or, whatever it is. Right. So yeah, I definitely recommend getting someone full-time.
And a pattern that I noticed when I researched your story is your threshold for quality. And like early on, you were an architect first, and so you have this eye for design. Your house here is immaculate, but maybe that's getting ahead a little bit. But like I forget, I think either Noah or Sam Parr had mentioned once of like, anything that Marshall touches, he does it great. I'm curious how you think about that for yourself in terms of like quality versus just shipping something.
I really care about design. And I love interior design. My wife's an interior designer. I wasn't an architect, but I wanted to be one. I worked for a firm for a while. There's like a Reid Hoffman quote that everyone always quotes. It's like, if you weren't embarrassed by your first version, you launched too late. I think that's terrible advice. Obviously, he's way more successful than I am, but from my own experience, it's like back to basics. Like first impressions matter. There's a really high bar for quality these days in everything. And you can't just slap together some offer and throw it up. We're making these little solutions for problems. And like, I think presentation, what the website looks like, customer experience, all those things matter just because I value it. And it's, I think, really helped, in our own branding and everything.
Yeah. And it seems that you have a way of like working with really, really great quality people too. In each sort of business venture, you've been around, like you've been able to either source top talent or partner with people with top talent. Where do you think that comes from? And do you think that part of it stems from working with someone like Andrew Wilkinson, like early on in your career?
Yeah, I worked for Andrew, probably, what year was that? 2013, for a few years. We did like a joint venture together. And then I worked inside of MetaLab software and, got to see Slack get designed, and I had no part in that, but, I was the next room over and saw it being worked on, stuff like that. To me, it comes back to, like, you were asking me like what books I recommend, and like, sure, I've read a bunch, but I really put the most value that I've received in being on Twitter. For me, like I got on Twitter, I don't know, 2008, 2009, something like that. And, we're in Dallas. Like I grew up here. I never ended up in Silicon Valley, but it was my connection. I started following a bunch of Silicon Valley people and interacting with them and reading their thoughts. And it's like, this is someone's like collection of thoughts after the fact versus, following people that talk about what they're working on, what they're thinking about. It's now and for the times. And there's value in both. But yeah, I put the most value in that because just interacting with all these people, like, I wasn't physically in that place, but I could hang out with them on the internet. And, I started talking about my own stuff I'm working on. I think it's as simple as like, make cool things, share them with the world, like talk about it, like unashamedly talk about what you're working on. And I think really interesting things happen, serendipitous interactions. I met Andrew through Twitter. I met my last co-founder in the e-commerce business. Like I can source it all back to Twitter. I met Nick Huber from Twitter. He became a partner, ended up buying my business. And it's just, and like whether today, maybe it's LinkedIn for you, maybe it's YouTube, whatever, but like hanging out, it's like the biggest unlock, I think. Like so many good things can happen from it.
Looking back at your journey, it seems like you did it all right. I'm sure at the time it didn't always feel like that. Would you encourage like entrepreneurs watching this to be like, carve out just a little bit more time to not just, be on the grind working, but like share your real frustration, share your real wins, share that publicly on LinkedIn or Twitter, or like have like an accountability group or something like that? Or what would
Yeah, I mean, you got to find out what works for you, right? Like I think I'm in like a CEO group, and that's almost like group therapy for CEOs, almost is what it feels like.
That's Hampton.
Yeah, Hampton. Yeah. I think it all can be valuable. And I think to like build an audience today, at least in like the B2B space, it's best if like you've already done something interesting and then you can talk about that. But yeah, I mean, I think going on the journey and following along with other interesting people and interacting with them, just organically, hanging out with people and interacting with them, I think, yeah, interesting things come from that.
Marshall, you just exited your company. What's next?
Yeah. So I sold it in the end of April 2024. We're in December now. The plan was just like, no plans, just like take time off. I've never had a sabbatical or anything like that. I've always been like the, lead guy, CEO, whatever, founder. So it was just nice to just like take a breather. I sold Peel prior and I sold Ludwig, and it was just like, I'm gonna have nothing on my plate for a while. But, my wife laughed. She's like, I gave you 6 months before you get the itch. And sure enough, I'm getting the itch now. So still kind of tinkering around, but I think a guy I used to work with, him and I are going to start, I guess I would call it like a operational consulting agency. Like with what we learned on Shepherd, like we had really high margins, primarily an overseas team. And, in my opinion, it still operated super well, put a little amount of, work into the business, delegated a ton of it. Like I look at other businesses and I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve margin, to improve just process. And so I think the idea from just like a high level will be to kind of start like a consulting agency, using that as maybe a launch pad to kind of find other opportunities. Like we'll charge something, for our time. Hopefully we don't have to do that very long. And we'll use that to kind of look for other opportunities to build other services around. So very kind of broad idea, but that's kind of the high level of how we look at it.
And I'm sure you had tons of other like maybe ideas or other things that you could do, including just doing nothing for a little bit, which we're not sure if you're able to do or not.
Yeah.
But like, did you have any like way of thinking through, okay, how do I want to be spending my time? Where do I see the biggest opportunity? Like any way that you thought through it, or like, oh, actually this just makes sense and it's a good opportunity?
Yeah, it's funny. It started from like what could I just do individually to like fill some time? And, it's like, all right, maybe consulting. I've never done consulting before. Could be fun. But it's like I always look at how something could evolve. And I view it as like a really great way to either like look at like I love B2B. That, I started in consumer and then, moved to B2B, which is Shepherd, obviously. And you can charge more, like you're dealing with professionals, not consumers. Like I just like that space. When we were starting Peel, like backing up, we had a bunch of different ideas. Me and my co-founder, his name was John. It's like, let's start like a holding company and just make like a studio essentially. So we started Peel, we started that linen bedding company I mentioned. We had a notebook company, had a bunch of e-commerce stuff, and dabbled in some software. But to me, it's like use the same team, build a bunch of different stuff. I'm a big fan of like throwing stuff against the wall, just like get it out there. Still the high polish, is what I care about. And I think you end up hopefully you find a winner out of that. And that's kind of what happened with us with Peel, was like the big winner. So I kind of view it the same way as like using that model as like I think we'll find something there. We'll uncover a nugget. But another idea I think that someone could run with that I think is really interesting is using that same like studio model, but with the full intention of basically building products around an influencer. And so I think you can take one of two paths. An influencer, if they have their own business and they can promote it to their own audience, it's like the biggest cheat code ever. It's like free marketing. You have the thing, you have the audience hungry for different services. You just need to fulfill it and you have free marketing. Like it's just such a cheat code in my opinion. So I've had the idea where like you can do that model and either take one of two paths, go out and find a influencer that like, has a good audience, is sick of like doing paid, ads or partnership deals or brand deals or whatever. And they're like, I like the idea of owning a business. I just don't know where to start. And you be that guy and like, okay, well, what is your audience? What are they after? What kind of thing? And like an example is, I don't know, an interior design, influencer, maybe a rug company, something like that like is a good fit for the audience, and then craft the whole thing around them. And they need to be on board to pitch it properly and it not just be this week's post is sponsored by my company, but more so like talk about it organically and genuinely. And like, they're going to be excited about it, right? You want to build something like that. I think the other approach that would work, the other one is like build that thing with the sole intention of finding one or a couple influencers to partner with. And if you can get it off the ground first and get some traction and then bring it to someone, I think you could retain more equity versus probably going to have to give up more equity if you start it with that person from the get-go. But I just think that's like a huge cheat code if you're going to start something. Like if I was going to start another e-commerce business, I would, all right, let me find someone that I would fit that idea if I have an idea for something versus let's go get some Facebook ads and hope to grow this thing,
Yeah.
I like that model a lot. I think there's a lot of different ideas and services you could build around different people.
And you've clearly seen the before and after, not having that, having to acquire customers, afterwards having that. Obviously, you're going to do the paid stuff and stuff as well, but getting people to use and promote your product in a way that's organic is really hard. Yeah. And doing that at scale is harder. I ran the influencer team for AppSumo a couple years back. It was very, very clear. I could not even, before I even looked at our Airtable of like what was working, what wasn't working, it was very clear one thing. Did they actually use the product and like it, or were they just saying, sponsored by AppSumo sort of thing?
Yeah.
I think to your point, it's such a pivotal part of like pairing the right person, of course, with the right audience, but also that they actually use and love the product.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the big ways we grew the business. Is Nick Huber was a customer. It was probably 2 years into the business. He found us organically. I think hired like 10 people through us, reached out to me. He's like, hey, I don't know if you know who I am. Got this big audience. I'm a customer. Like, I'm super happy. It's been kind of transformational for my business. Our margins are improved. And we did just an affiliate deal initially. He's like, I could talk about you, to my audience, super happy. We were cutting him affiliate checks, 20 grand a month kind of stuff. He was driving a ton of business. And eventually that, about a year later, we converted that into like an equity deal, and him and I figured something out. But that experience is what gave me the idea for this kind of thing. Is just like, it was such a huge unlock where it's like, he could pitch us really well. To Nick's credit, he's a good pitchman to begin with, but like being a customer first and really using and loving the product. And obviously you have to deliver and have a good service and, all those things that matter. But I wish I could plot it on a graph for you, but like, yeah, it just really exploded the business. And then about a year later, we did another deal with Sean Puri from the My First Million podcast. Similar deal. And he, used us, liked us, and talked about us. And again, it ramped growth again. And yeah, it was awesome. It was great. I want to find more influencers and build stuff around them like that. It just worked really well.
What's just like maybe just a quick brainstorm of like a tactical approach to figure something out like that? If someone's watching this and thinking like, oh, well, I don't have the product, but I could probably reach out to these, 50 influencers or these like 5 to 10 influencers, figure out what their favorite products are, or like own a niche first and then match that with brands. Mm-hmm. Like, how would you approach either side of that, with the brand or with the influencer?
Yeah. So I guess 2 ways I would go about it. Like, if I was launching this business today, I would use my story with Shepherd to try to get on a bunch of podcasts and pull in influencers and, them, hear my story. And it's like, ooh, I want that too.
How about somebody
but right. If you don't have that, I would take the other route that we talked about, which is go get the thing off the ground. Like, go, do the Facebook ads, whatever, like get the idea, e-commerce thing, whatever it is that you eventually intend to like partner with someone and get it off the ground, get some traction, build something that, you can show to an influencer and be like, look at this, like, do you want to get involved? Because you don't have the reputation to go off of. You just have the brand and, make it look good and have a high bar of quality and everything, and get them excited about it. And it's like, look, like, we've done this organically with your audience. Like, we could, obviously you're going to have to negotiate and do a good deal that works for both of you. But I think that's the only way to make that work, because otherwise they're probably getting hit up, honestly, all the time. And they just don't know who to like work with. And I don't know, like, everyone, how do I trust this person versus that? And so it's just like, make something awesome and then go find someone to partner and pitch it to.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was thinking of like, maybe if you don't know the product yet and that you want to have some sort of product, maybe in like the business niche. And like curate, okay, reach out. Maybe Nick's too big now, but whoever the up and coming sort of people are.
I guess some of the stuff that I think about is like price and just like the size, the TAM. The big YouTuber, Logan Paul. It's like they have the energy drink company, low price point, mass appeal. You need like a huge influencer that's just kind of like the Coca-Cola of YouTubers, which is like the Paul brothers. That's a good fit for that, versus like, we were super niche, but we had a high price point. You don't need a lot of customers to make the numbers work. And so I would think about it that way. And I think just like category, obviously, like, if Shepherd had the opportunity to work with, like Logan Paul, it wouldn't have made sense. Like, you got to have the right fit. The stuff that I think it makes sense is like, I've got a gamer neighbor that is a big Twitch streamer. Similar story. He's doing brand deals, stuff like that. Doesn't have equity in any of these things. I think like a potato chip company could do really well for someone like that, or like a snack brand, or like they're like Monster Energy wants to do deals with them. Well, what else is in that space? So I would think about it that way. Business economics still matter, and like, can you do it on a subscription basis? Can you do, can it be high margin? Are you going to have enough customers from that person? From a high level, I'd think about matching audience to the products and price point and size, and all these things need to make sense.
In doing research for this, I dug up some of your early writing, and you have an awesome blog, by the way. Thanks. And one of the things I found, like years ago, you were talking about that profit first book and concept, and then like now everyone's kind of talking about it. Yeah. How did you first discover that, and what other cool things have you found?
Mike Michalowicz, yeah. The way I discovered that, I followed that guy for a long time. I tried to have a iPhone app business way back in the day, and I went out and flew out to his office and like pitched him to like sponsor this silly promo thing that I had going on, and like met him, and Yeah, this is like 15 years ago. So I followed his work for a long time. He's written probably 6 books now. But yeah, I think just like the core of that book around knowing what profit you want to ink out and then working backwards from that of just like, okay, I want to have a 30% profit margin business or 30 grand or whatever it is. And then having your expenses and looking at your expenses through that lens of like, well, we gotta slash that to make that happen. I think that's really powerful. I just think as a whole, founders don't pay themselves enough. You should pay yourself really well if you can. Like, don't just, I get the idea of investing in the business, but if there's money, I think founders should pay themselves more than they are on average right now. And it's going to do a lot of things. Like, it's going to give you that breathing room to like continue and run the marathon with this thing. Like, I would not stick with things if they don't pay well. Like, that's at the end of the day, like, it's fun, it's a game, it's entrepreneurship is super exciting, but like, you got to make money. Founders need to focus on having better profit margins. Like, I think a lot of people accept horribly low margins. And like, I came from ecom. Like, ecom has really low margins on average. Having to like struggle through that. Then when I shifted to like a different business, I felt like I was on easy mode because it was just like ecom can be a struggle sometimes. But yeah, I think people don't look at margin enough and really pay attention to their P&L. Like off camera, we were talking about like back when we were running the e-commerce stuff, like top line was growing. And I was just like, why are we not making money? Like, this is like, why? Like, I didn't really, the books were kind of just like, I'd phone it in, I talked to our accountant once a quarter. I read Profit First and I got interested in personal finance on, my side of things. And then, it goes back to the business, and I really invested in educating myself on like how to understand a P&L and a balance sheet. And I think that was really, really important on my journey to like be able to improve the economics of a business, because like you have to understand the numbers. And like we were talking about, it's like, I think it's as simple as rearranging your chart of accounts to like how you think about your business and grouping expense categories, how you think about it. And is this a fixed cost or a variable cost, and moving things around. And when I did that and kind of like made the P&L my own, I was able to then like, okay, we're spending way too much on this, or, maybe we actually should earmark 10 grand a month to like test out these marketing experiments. Cause it comes back to the classic, like what gets measured gets managed. And, I think you have to educate yourself on it to be able to tweak it.
We mentioned one of your like early on year in review blog posts. Has the act or process of writing helped illuminate any other areas for you of whether it's like personal or business?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about copywriting off camera. Like, I'm not a copywriter, but like, I think I'm good enough to write like a really good headline. And it's just, to me, it's like offer. Like, what is the offer? Is it super compelling? Like, I spent a lot of time, the headline that's on the somewhere.com homepage, still the same one that we started with. I'm sure eventually it'll get tweaked, but there's just so many good benefits of writing. Like, to me, the way I view Twitter, as well as like crafting a really good hook, is like a really micro way to test your copywriting skills of like, all right, you have an interesting story or thread to write. The first line, like, are you going to engage people or not? Like where we started with, April 2020, I did 2 things that changed my life. It was this and that. Like, I rewrote that hook a million times on that thread, and that touch tool thread did really well. And I, I put it back to like having a good hook. And obviously the story needs to be compelling, but YouTube thumbnails, like all this stuff, like that is like the skill today, in my opinion, is having a really compelling offer and a really great hook. And I think, your opener to a blog post, things like that. Like, I always try to make it something that's like juicy and compelling. And writing tweet threads and newsletter, blogs, like whatever, like that's how you get your reps in. Like, that's how you get that practice. And there's only so many landing pages you can make. And I think that's where you can get your practice in.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're a member of Hampton. What have you learned in that like CEO group that's been like profound for you, if anything?
I joke with my wife that like, so they pair you off with groups of, I think, you and 7 others. So a group of 8 plus a moderator, or they call it like a facilitator. And you once a month call, and, we kind of all go around and talk about what's going on in our business. And like, entrepreneurship is a game of your own psychology. Like, it was really eye-opening to like get in there and like really dive into, other people's, it's all like, you can't talk about what happens in that call or whatever, and you can disclose everything in your business, and it stays between you and your group. And it's like a therapy session. It's like, we all struggle, it impacts home life, or it impacts like, all the same things. And so it's just like really comforting in a weird way to know that like, okay, like we're all kind of struggling with the same stuff. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of like peace that comes with that of like, okay, like I'm not crazy. These things are stressful. It's like we're talking about successes, but like there's a lot of hard things along the way, and I've gone through all my own hardships, and it's just kind of refreshing to connect with other entrepreneurs and know that like they've also either are going through, hard things, and you help each other through that. And yeah, I mean, bad things happen, and you got to, it's how you react to them. And I just think that, yeah, it gave me a lot of like peace in a weird way of just like, this is kind of normal. This is like part of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So really anybody at any level, just find people going through your same struggles and, share wins, share losses sort of thing.
Yeah. For, whether it's something super formal like that, or, just you and another buddy starting a company, or your co-founder. It's the value of a co-founder, in my opinion, is like go through the shit together. But yeah, however you find your group, I think it's really important to be able to open up and share what's going on, because yeah, it's way more common than I think we all think if you're in your own little bubble.
Last thing, you're getting ready to move to North Carolina. What are you most excited about?
Oh man, trees. You guys are in Austin, so you got more trees, but we're in Dallas and there's just like a lack of trees out here. And my wife and I, after all this, it was like, we could be anywhere, like what matters to us. And we started searching around and kind of did a nationwide search and fell in love with this area in North Carolina. And yeah, found a lot that we bought, and just looking forward to like kind of designing our life, and picking where we want to be. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome, man. Any final words of wisdom, challenge or nugget, or anything you want to leave the viewers with?
I mean, if I can be helpful, like my email address is marshall@needwant.com. Just Marshall with 2 L's. I'm happy to help where I can. Got a lot of free time currently, so feel free to reach out. But yeah, happy to help if I can.
Okay. I don't know. Do you actually want all these people emailing
It's
you?
not me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like if I get 20, if I get 30, it's not a big deal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he said it's okay. Also check out the newsletter. It's really good. Awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
Marshall.
Yeah. Thanks. Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah.